what we did. I don't know if anybody's got any comments on that. Okay. So Tom,
I think individually would be better. So I move that we approve the January 12th minutes with the one correction that Bruce meant, with the correct spelling.
you have a second?
Second.
Okay. And then who do we have for a second there?
I'll let the lady go before me. I would
Linda?
my second.
Linda's a second.
Okay, Linda. All in favor of accepting the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. So the minutes of January 12th can now be posted as adopted. And also, I want to say right up front, Josh Muse has been so helpful with these minutes, okay? And of our last meeting, he got out the draft minutes within the 5-day period, which we haven't been doing in the past, and I very much appreciate it. And I also, before we get to the hearing, I want to say to April, April has done great work on the geographic naming petition. And I know we'll be talking about staffing with Tom McMurdo later, and he's talked about people stepping up, but I just wanted to express my appreciation publicly. Let's go to the minutes of April 13th, 2021. If anybody's got any corrections, suggestions, let them speak or forever hold their peace. I looked at them again. Go ahead.
I have one correction in the opening paragraph on geographic naming, the third line.
Yep.
If they had any dates for the board, the next two words to consider, those two words are smashed together.
Yeah, I see that there.
Need spacing.
So, and if Josh can pick that up, thank you, Linda. So then if no other corrections, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. If
So moved.
Linda moves, second.
Second.
James seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Say
Aye.
all opposed? Nobody opposes. So the minutes of April 13th are adopted. Yay. It's a lot easier doing it this way.
Yes.
Now we have the minutes of June 17th. I have a couple things. Josh, I think the version that's online has not had may not have had everything accepted. So it's I don't know if you can.
Gotcha.
I can't even see myself. Am I on? I can't see. Oh yeah, you can see it. So if we can make the changes and then post that appropriately. The only thing I see on it, and I was pretty careful with this because this was the hearing on Negro Brook, on I think it's page 3. I had put in a comment in the first big paragraph from the top. Mr. Hazard responded this by noting that he believed there was a misunderstanding of his statement. I believe that was Evan Litwin who said that. I was criticizing at that point the fact that Townsend Historical Society was sort of denigrated and attacked because they had been accused of polite racism, and it was Mr. Litwin that had made the statement originally. So if you could correct Mr. Hazard to Mr. Litwin, that would be it. And that's all I have there. So
I have just a small, very small thing under on the first page, public to be heard at the bottom of the page. I think it should say a member of the public attending the meeting via phone.
Okay.
Just a little nit to pick.
Yeah. All set. Thank you. A motion then to accept those minutes.
So moved. Linda?
Second.
Second, Tom.
Tom, all in favor signify by saying yes.
Aye.
Yes. Aye.
Okay, opposed, no. Okay, the ayes have it. The minutes of June 17th are approved. Now we have minutes of July 13th, which was a regular meeting. I have no changes to what I wrote. And I don't know if anybody else has any comments or additions you want to make or corrections. Hearing none, I'll entertain.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. Sorry.
Okay. So I'll accept a motion, entertain a motion.
So moved. Linda?
Second.
Tom.
Tom, okay, all
Whoever
in
else.
favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, hearing none in opposition, the minutes are adopted unanimously. And then the last one. We had a lot of meetings recently.
Yes, we did.
And we have the draft minutes for the special meeting we had on April 25th, 2021. I don't see anything I missed, but someone else may. Any comments, corrections? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. It seems to be my job.
There you go. And
Linda?
second?
Second.
Okay, James seconds.
Seems to be my job.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good, James.
All opposed signify by saying no. You notice I threw a curveball at you
Oh.
guys.
I'm listening, Bruce.
You know,
listening.
I threw a curve. All approve signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and noes, the ayes have it, and we've approved the minutes, and we should be up to date. And all those minutes should now, with any corrections, please switch into the approved column, and I'll be very happy.
Can I just add in here, that was a monumental job to go through all those, and I thank you very much for doing that, you and Josh. It was really, it's great to have those. They're clearly written and convey the emphasis of the meeting without being overly detailed. So thank you very much. It's an art to write minutes, and you've done a great job in creating those. So thank you.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate that. You're welcome. I think it took over 6 hours one day. I was really gnarly in the evening, but minutes are important. Minutes are important. And so we have now an up-to-date record of our minutes, I hope. So that takes care of that. What we'll need to do next then is to, I'll need a motion to open up a public hearing on the proposal to name Buffalo Mountain in Hardwick, Vermont.
Okay, this is Tom. I
Maxie,
move that we open them.
Maxie moved. Okay, we
Maxie
have,
moved.
yeah, Maxie so moved. A second.
Second.
James, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed. Oh my goodness, I got my daughter. My daughter's calling from Germany. I have my tablet open so I see the Google documents. So Maxie knows a little bit about our situation in Germany. Before we formally start the hearing, and I want the petitioners to make a presentation, I just want to thank the petitioners for the very comprehensive and complete job they have done presenting this petition. I want to thank April, and I think Jason was part of the process. And hopefully we'll get to a point where we have a checklist of things that help people in doing so. But I really, really appreciate it. And I do want to ask one question of the petitioners before they even make a presentation. I looked at all the signatures on your petition list. And is there really a Thomas Aquinas who lives in Hardwick?
I don't know. Do you know?
I don't know.
I have a graduate degree in theology, so that really, Thomas Aquinas who lives on 193 South Main Street. So, okay, somebody got there. So I don't know who the spokesperson is. So if you could identify yourself and make your presentation, and then we'll also interact with April and have a discussion and hopefully some action. So the floor is yours.
You can take off your mask.
Okay. Can I take off my mask
Yeah,
for this? Mike Lance, petitioner, live in East Hardwick. I'm accompanied by Elizabeth Wisdow, who's on the select board, also head of the president of the Hardwick Historical Society, and a former professor at LSU of library sciences. Anything else you'd like to say, Liz?
I was the archivist. I was the archives track.
Thank you.
Should I start? I've got a little statement prepared.
Yes, certainly.
Okay. This petition is not an appeal to rename an existing geographic feature, as appeals often are. I did sit in on the Negro Brook petition, and Jason Broughton let me know that frequently these meetings are about changing names, and that this isn't. Instead, it's a request to formally recognize a peak by a name that has a long history in the Northeast Kingdom. Buffalo Mountain has been integral to Hardwick history for over 150 years. A mine was opened on the slopes in the late 1800s and named Buffalo Hill Quarry. That, along with the rest of the granite industry, helped fuel Hardwick's economic growth well into the 1900s. With respect to Buffalo Mountain being a well-accepted name, it's been regularly referred to in newspaper articles since at least the late 1800s through the 2020s. It's also been referred to in U.S. Geographical Survey documents and Vermont granite industry documents. Despite being recorded historically in state and federal documents, for whatever reason, the name has never made it into the official records. Buffalo Mountain, Buffalo Road, Buffalo Mountain Co-op, Buffalo Mountain Power Sports in Hardwick have all borrowed from the name. The Hardwick Municipal Plan, published in 2019, lists Buffalo Mountain as one of Hardwick's scenic offerings, along with Hardwick Lake, the Lamoille River, and Mackville Pond, which contribute to both the beauty and recreational opportunities of the area. That's a quote from the plan. And the plan notes that the town owns 70 acres on Buffalo Mountain. Peak of Buffalo Mountain is 3/4 of a mile and rises 70 stories above downtown Hardwick, where the Lamoille River cuts through the Woodbury Range. It towers over the intersections of routes 14 and 15 and is the dominant geographic feature visible from downtown Hardwick. A recent AT&T petition to erect a cell tower on Buffalo Mountain was discussed and recorded in Hardwick Select Board minutes, Hardwick Gazette articles, and letters from town government to the PUC, all of which mentioned Buffalo Mountain by name. When I first moved to Hardwick, several people pointed out Buffalo Mountain to me. However, it turned out they were pointing to Woodbury Mountain, which has very distinctly the features of a back, looks like the back of a buffalo. And it seemed reasonable to call it Buffalo Mountain. However, Woodbury Mountain already has a name. In fact, a mountain range is named after it. So no point in calling that Buffalo Mountain. I also learned that some in the area were teaching their children that Woodbury Mountain is Buffalo Mountain. Hoping to obtain clarification, I contacted the Vermont state geologist, who at that time was Marjorie Gale. And she informed me that there were no official records, either state or federal, that identifies Buffalo Mountain. After more research, I contacted John Kim, who was good enough. He's the current state geologist, and he directed me to the State Geographic Naming Committee. So I'm here with support from the Hardwick Select Board, the Hardwick Historical Society, the East Hardwick Neighborhood Organization, and over 100 signatories to the petition to request that the naming committee accept and confirm the request to formally name Buffalo Mountain. I also, despite Buffalo Mountain being known as Buffalo Mountain for over 150 years, the Abenaki have lived here quite a bit longer than that. And I checked with Chief Don Stevens, and he had no issues with naming it Buffalo Mountain. Although he and George Pescon-Larrabee did let me know that the Abenaki name for Buffalo Mountain is Seacon. And that's the end of my piece. Would you like to add anything, Liz?
There's nothing I could add to that, Mike, except that I've spent a lot of time in the old newspapers, and in the 19th century, Buffalo Mountain was referred to pretty randomly as Buffalo Hill or Buffalo Mountain. But by 2021, the name has firmly settled into Buffalo Mountain.
Okay, thank you, April. Well, first of all, again, I want to reiterate the completeness of your petition, the depth of the research you did. I'm familiar with the mountain because we have good friends in East Hardwick or Walden, and they even heard about it. We were up there for lunch a couple Saturdays ago, and I frequently go through Hardwick. So I know when you're heading back to Chittenden County and you take that left or that right in town, there it is, if I'm correct. And so I'm now pleased, hopefully, to formally associate a name with it. April, do you have any comments, or Tom McMurdo?
I do not. It was a wonderfully prepared petition, and I verified the locations and found some additional newspaper articles that refer to it as Buffalo Mountain. And I'm kind of astounded that it was never officially recognized as that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
And Tom, go ahead, sorry.
I would just second that this is one of the most thorough and well-researched petitions that we've received, and we certainly appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
And I don't know if you were on at the beginning. We have our sort of our advisor from the U.S. Geological Survey, Board of Geographic Names, Jenny Runyon, is on from Reston. Are you at home, Jenny, or are you at the office now? And
I'm still at home. Yes.
Do you live in Reston, or you work in Reston?
I work in Reston at the U.S. Geological Survey headquarters, but I live out in Loudoun County, which is probably about, I don't know, 10 miles west of Reston, out toward Dulles Airport. Many of you know where that might be.
Oh, yeah. I used to live in Reston, so I understand.
Oh, okay.
We work very closely with Jenny and the feds, as we lovingly call them. And because, we make an action here in Vermont. It may affect what Vermont does, but we like to be in harmony with what the federal government expects of petitioners. There will be times that people, through not knowing, will go directly to the feds. And Jenny says, well, you should talk to your geographic naming board. And so I think you've touched all the bases correctly. And I think Jenny would attest to that. And it's good. It's really good to know the history, even though, Tom, what's the difference between buffalo and bison?
I wasn't even going to bring it up, Bruce. I tell you, yeah, buffalo are actually Asian, I believe. The buffaloes, but they're the American bison. But everybody calls it a buffalo, so that's what we go by.
I used to live in North Dakota, and I would go out to the Theodore Roosevelt National Park, and I always gave buffalo, I did, as we call them out there, a wide range of room. They can be tough critters if they come charging at you. So any questions or comments from the board?
I don't have any questions. I think, as people have said, this is a remarkably thorough, well, not maybe remarkable, a wonderfully thorough petition. Just tongue in cheek, I would ask you, the chief of the Abenaki asked if you had consulted with the buffalo to see if it was okay to.
Yes, he did.
And I was curious as to whether you had done that.
They didn't answer.
Oh, yeah, it's always a problem. Wi-Fi is difficult out there sometimes, yes.
Well,
But in
go
any
ahead.
case, I think it seems to me to be obvious that we should approve this petition, but I would like to hear if there are any objections to it, rather than restating the points of the petition in favor of it. I wonder if anyone has any objections to it.
The only people I would suspect would object to it are the people who call Woodbury Mountain Buffalo Mountain.
Now, does Hardwick border on Woodbury?
Yes.
So what's that, down Route 14?
Mhm.
Yeah, next one down, go head south.
Yeah. Well, a little
looked up-
history before I entertain a motion, but I used to know an old timer in Hardwick, and she said there was time they used to get their water on I think there may be a hill south of town, and there was a spring feeding it in a pipe, and she said the water was so cold it made her jaw crack. I had never heard that, and it's always stuck with me ever since then. So
Yeah, that's actually in the Woodbury Gulf.
okay,
Or the Woodbury Gulf.
okay,
And
thank you.
people still use it today.
Yes, they
as a
do.
place to get, it's really good water. And another historical note, the round basin that the water flows into was once a watering fountain in the square in the middle of Hardwick, that place where Route 15 makes a right turn heading off to St. Johnsbury, had a water basin for horses. After they moved the basin, and we really don't know when that basin was moved out of there.
Okay.
It was called the dummy. It took a number of configurations, and eventually trucks got big enough they couldn't negotiate around it, and so we took it out altogether.
Okay, thank you. I see James has got his hand up.
Yes, I really do appreciate the petitioner's presentation as well. I was wondering, though, with regard to Chief Stevens, I noticed the joke, have you consulted with the buffalo? And but he, in a very subtle mentioning of, I think Sikon is the Abenaki name for buffalo.
It's, I'll give you the spelling, P-S-I-K-O. P is in Paul, S-I-K-O.
Okay, P is in Pisco. I'm just sort of wondering, is it any way possible, I don't know, in documents, since they mean the same thing, buffalo and Pisco, that in parentheses behind, and like I said, I can't imagine people saying Buffalo Pisco Mountain or having some kind of statue erected. But I'm just sort of wondering, sometimes I wonder whether or not the Abenaki in Vermont don't really feel that they have the power to make certain kinds of changes. So there may be certain kind of subtleties. I was looking at the news yesterday, and I noticed that there was actually a public school, I forget the level, might have been about middle school or high school, and they actually had the name of their high school literally an Abenaki name. And I just noticed the dedication that the people around that school had, Abenaki that is, in terms of educating the students with regard to Abenaki history, supplying hundreds and hundreds of books, all kinds of other resources into the process of educating a whole school basically about the Abenaki. So to me, a name can mean so much. And I'm just wondering, again, I like Buffalo Mountain too. I'm even wondering whether the name Buffalo came from, at some point, Native Americans hunting buffalo. Yeah, I just don't know. But I'm just wondering, is there any way that Pisco could be incorporated in some, if nothing else, but symbolic way into the mountain name?
Jenny Runyon's got her hand up, and I'm sure has an insight for us.
Yes, thank you, James, for the comment there. I think the difference is, from my reading from the chief's response, he was saying that is the Abenaki word for buffalo, but I don't believe he was implying that was the Abenaki name for the mountain itself.
Okay.
So it would not be correct to record it as what we would call a variant name or an alternate name for the mountain itself. Now, certainly, he could have decided to propose Seco Mountain in place of Buffalo Mountain, but he chose not to. And if I'm reading his email, he certainly seemed supportive of the name Buffalo Mountain. He was just pointing out that it was the Abenaki word. Certainly, it would be appropriate to put it in the write-up, and even in the description of the mountain, we could, if the board feels like you'd like us to, we could put the translation in the history or description, but it would not be part of the name per se.
Okay.
When I talked about with George Larrabee about it, who's the war chief of the Hawk Clan, I asked him, did they have a name for the mountain, whether it was Seco or whatever else? And he said no, he didn't know of them having a name for that particular mountain. So I think it was just a point of information demonstrating that they know the Abenaki language and they can translate. I don't think that had anything to do with naming it.
Well,
Okay.
I'll make a comment. That's one of the shortest Abenaki names I've ever come across. They can be very long. The one for Mount Mansfield is about like this and actually means Moosehead Mountain. But we have had, just for you folks in Hardwick, the board has, I think we've named 3 geographic features with a Abenaki name, Miskashkik Brook in Plainfield, which means red spruce, and it's on Spruce Mountain. We did Sokoke Falls down near Rockingham. Sokoke was the eastern band of the Abenaki, and I don't know if we did suggest an Abenaki name for the waterfalls down near Bellows Falls, but the problem, all that is in New Hampshire. So New Hampshire, I guess, owns up to what? The low water mark on the Vermont side of the Connecticut River. I don't know whatever happened with that. Do you know, Jenny?
Oh, now you tested my memory there, Bruce. I can certainly take a quick look in our tracking system. I thought it was all those Bellows Falls names were approved a while ago, but I can certainly check on that. But yes, you have a history of working closely with Abenaki names, so it's good for you. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
There's another point. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
There's another point I'd like to make. The USGS service maps the official maps do not include Buffalo Mountain, but they have some other maps on their site that are interactive. And one of those interactive maps does actually have Buffalo Mountain. So it's in the USGS, kind of, but I don't think it's been formally done yet.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Adrian.
So in the room I'm located right now has a map of Caledonian County, and I was spending time looking to see if there was any features. So I would like to study that a little bit more. It's a little bit high. I can see, I don't know, 1858, Baker and Tilden. So I was going to look at it a little bit more closely, but I wanted to mention that because we were discussing historic maps. Just happenstance.
For the record, Adrian's up at the St. John's Mary Anthonyum. You're there today, I can tell. So that's good. James, do you have another question, or you just forget to lower your hand?
I did remember to lower it and then raise it again.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I want to ask the petitioners also, 150 years at least that it's been named Buffalo Mountain. Any idea what the origin of the name was, why they called it Buffalo Mountain?
None whatsoever.
The only reason I can think of calling it Buffalo Mountain is just like Woodbury Mountain, from a certain view, looks like the back of a buffalo. If you come down by Cooper Creek, where close to where Buffalo Mountain Road is.
Yes.
The mountain does very distinctly look like the back of a buffalo.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, thank you very much for your presentation.
I have a question from Ms. Dow. Have you ever seen some of the Library of Congress photographs that show downtown Hardwick during the 1936 presidential election with FDR banners up and other things? Have you ever seen those?
Absolutely. They
Okay.
even appear on placemats at the local diner.
Correct. Okay, good. I discovered those a couple years ago and found them very interesting. So I wanted to make sure you knew. So, okay, you're about 5 steps ahead of me, but that's normal for me. Okay, if now, Tom, my parliamentarian, do we recess the hearing and then vote?
Good question. What do we have done in the? I'm trying to remember what we've done in the past. It was done the hearing. Yeah, because we had because we have a motion to go into the hearing. Yeah, then we come out of the hearing. Then we need a motion to approve it, I believe.
Okay, so why don't we move
That's what
somebody?
we have done in the past.
Yeah, somebody move to come out of the hearing unless you have anybody else has any other comments. Maxie's.
I move that we get out of the hearing.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor of coming out of the hearing or adjourning the hearing and going back into the normal meeting, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, no. I mean, no. Pass, excuse me. So now we can entertain a motion on the petition, and I'll entertain one.
I move that we approve the petition to name the geographic feature in Hardwick, to name it Buffalo Mountain.
Do we have a second? James seconds. Do we have any discussion? Maxie,
Could one say officially name?
what's that?
Officially, that's my German accent, because it's been called Mountain for so long. So now we name it officially Buffalo Mountain.
So she wants to insert the word officially, to officially name the geographic feature in Hardwick, Buffalo Mountain.
I have no problem with that. So as I understand the motion, it's a motion to officially name the geographic feature at whatever the geographic coordinates are, Buffalo Mountain. And do we have, so no further discussion. Oh, well, I have a comment. Jenny Runyon, would you take this as guidance from the board that in your commentary or whatever description you guys come up with, that the SECO name would be added as background?
It would go into the write-up anyway that we have, and actually having, well, I guess I would suggest complete the motion and the vote, and then I can let you know maybe what happens next at the federal level.
Okay.
Just wait.
So
I don't want to jump the gun here.
Yep. So all in favor of officially naming this geographic feature Buffalo Mountain signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? The ayes have it unanimously, and you have a new name, official name there in Hardwick, and I'll come by and get a celebratory treat or something. So anyways, okay, before we go on to anything else, so Jenny, talk about what's next.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, thanks for letting me join the meeting, because now I get hot off the press. I get the results of the Vermont board's decision. So thank you. And it's always wonderful to hear the petitioners speak on the name. April was kind enough to share this petition with me a few weeks ago. And so we put out at the federal level each quarter a quarterly review list, which is essentially a summary of all the new proposals we've received in the previous quarter. And it just happened at the end of September was the end of the quarter. So I took the liberty of including Buffalo Mountain on the newest quarterly review list. So it's already posted on our website as an active proposal. And the reason that we do it that way is because we as feds are required to give tribal governments 60 days to comment on any name on that review list. So if we had waited till the end of the next quarter, in other words, the end of December, then the clock starts ticking. You're looking at January, February. The very soonest the US board could vote on this would be March. But now that we went ahead and included it, I took a leap of faith and assumed it would be approved. And we always could have withdrawn it if need be. But reading the write-up, I didn't see any, I never see slam dunk in this business, but it was as close as you can come, I think, in this case. So I went ahead and included it on the new review list. So the clock is now ticking. So we'll have, where are we, October, November, for the 60-day tribal notice, which means in theory, our board could vote on this at the federal level in December. So it sort of depends on when we get the formal Vermont board notice, although if you'll indulge me and let me consider, me being at this meeting and witnessing the vote as, quote, official enough, we can wait for the formality of the minutes, later. But I just had a couple of side comments. First of all, of course, the USGS logo is the bison, or I should say Department of the Interior, I should say. The logo is the bison. So this is very appropriate, I guess. And the fact is, as several folks have said, it is very unusual or very odd that this name has not been recorded before now. It's been on, I'm like April and the rest of you, I found sources, using the name, whether it was hill or mountain, but nonetheless, cases like this where a name is well established in local use and is published on what we call authoritative sources, and that USGS publication would have been one. Feel free to just send these along to us, Bruce or April, and we can evaluate them and potentially add them directly into the Geographic Names database without the formal state review. Now, in this case, it's never a bad idea to have that formal review. But again, if you find names that are published that you think should have been recorded decades ago, somehow this one was overlooked, and I don't know why, let us know, and we can talk about the possibility of expediting the process and just putting it directly in the database without this review. Again, it will get a Board on Geographic Names 2021 decision. It makes it that much, I shouldn't say more official, because every name is official, whether it's approved through this route or simply recorded from a published source. But nonetheless, if you come across others like this, send them along and we'll talk it over.
Okay. Elizabeth? Yeah, Dow.
Thank you for saying that. I did a master's thesis on Hardwick's granite industry, which was quite spectacular. Those of you who have been through Union Station in Washington, D.C. should bear in mind that that building is a Hardwick Company building.
Wow.
Never knew that.
The granite came out of Bethel, but the company that did the work was a Hardwick company. The Hardwick, most of the Hardwick sheds worked with granite that came out of Woodbury. And the vast proportion of that granite came from what contemporary documents refer to as either Robeson or Robinson Mountain. I haven't pursued it, but it does show up in geological reports, et cetera, et cetera. And in fact, the quarries are still open and they're still taking granite off them. So am I right in thinking that if I pursue this a bit, I could just send you documentation of the name of that mountain, which I will admit is slowly being chipped away, and it could be added to the database without taking up these people's time with it?
And actually, you have some of that documentation because it's mentioned in those same USGS and state granite reports, granite industry reports.
but it does not show up on maps.
Sure, sure, yeah. From a federal perspective, I mean, I don't want to step on the toes of the Vermont board, and certainly if you all feel it's appropriate at the state level to do a more thorough review like this and have the formal hearing and get the town, petition or whatever it may be, I'm certainly not going to impose, it suggests that we jump right over the state. And I think even in the case of the Buffalo Mountain, given that there is some usage of Buffalo Hill, I think it was appropriate in this case to take it through the state review process just to establish that Buffalo Mountain is the preferred name. We will record Buffalo Hill as a variant name because it has been published. But our board members, when they review it, will want confirmation the Buffalo Mountain is what, as you said, Elizabeth, is the name in present day local use, certainly. And so your other example, certainly if there's some debate at all that it's Robinson, Robeson, if there's some inconsistency, it comes down to the predominance of evidence. If you find 90% of the usage is Robinson, by all means, send it along. And I'll work closely with Bruce and April to decide how we want to proceed with it. They may say, let's take it through our process just to cross those T's and dot those I's, just to be absolutely sure that's the name we all agree on. If the usage is 50-50, certainly you'd want to have the state board review it. We don't want to put the name on the map and have somebody come out of the woodwork later and say, I've lived here all my life and I've always called it Robeson or Robson or some other name. So having this hearing process makes it that much more authoritative and official. So I'll defer to Bruce and April. I don't want to impose. But certainly, yes, if the name is well documented, if it's on a map, all the better. If you've not found any maps, it's kind of, could go either way, I suppose.
Yeah. Thanks for the Tom, you've got your hand up. You got to unmute, Tom.
Hear you.
Sorry. Yep, there we go. Wiz, I just wanted to say, if you've done the research and you've put everything together, why not make the next step and put a petition into the board? That would be my suggestion there. That way we can officially name it on the state level.
Yeah. Yeah. No argument for me. That makes perfect sense in the federal level, and that just makes it that much more blessed.
Before we move on, I just have to make one quip. I can't help myself. Elizabeth, you talked about that mountain being slowly chipped away by the granite industry. One of my favorite movies was filmed in Wales, The Man Who Went Up a Hill and Came Down a Mountain. Well, this may be the case of the man who went up a mountain and came down a hill. So why don't we, I want to thank you both and all who contributed to circulating the petition. And, Jenny was right. Not all of these hearings are slam dunks. I mean, Negro Brook obviously was not, but we had a proposal to change the name of Mount Ascutney. That wasn't a slam dunk. We had some smaller things. So doing your research is really good. Building the proper case certainly makes things go much smoother. And this is a case of that. So without further comment, we can move on in our agenda. And I want to thank, is it Skip and Elizabeth, actually for making the trip. Now, it's not that far from Hardwick to Barry. So, but I'm glad I haven't seen the inside of that room for at least 2 years. So I'm glad to see it's being used.
And let me say, they just want to go to Barry to tell the people in Barry where true granite comes from, right?
Yeah. Well, I used to work on Capitol Hill. And I never knew the granite connection with Union Station. And I'd go through it all the time. And our former state librarian was with the Library of Congress, and he had a meeting in the Madison building, which is up on Capitol Hill. And I said, well, when you're there, you're actually inside Vermont because it's Vermont marble that went into that building. So there you go. We have a history of mineral extraction in this state and exportation. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now,
Bruce, before we go on, can I just make a comment to Tom and April? I think Tom McMurdo and April. I thought it was great to have all of that supporting petition material online. I had, to the extent that it's important, I had real trouble reading that geographic map I couldn't figure out where the mountain was on the USGS map that was part of that. And I wonder if it couldn't, I tried to enlarge it and then I couldn't read the names and whatever. So if in the future, if on those maps, if we could just have a little arrow pointing to the feature we're supposed to be looking at, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
And I also I have to apologize. April, you sent this stuff out on September 3rd to me and says, do I forward this to the board? And I somehow lost that. And I did get it out over the weekend to the board, but I want to apologize to the board for not giving you the link soon enough, and apologize to April for not following up. So there you go. Jenny Runyon, your hand is up.
Always gonna have the last word. You know me, Bruce. I just wanted to thank Maxie for her comment earlier. She's absolutely right. We do differentiate between new name, which would be a brand new name made up this week to name a feature, and the expression we use is to make official a name in local or published use. And she's absolutely right. In this case, this would be to make official a name. So that word officially was very much appropriate in the motion, I thought. So you're right. There is a difference between, as far as we're concerned, they're both new names for federal use. But there's a big difference between a brand new name and something that clearly has been well established for over 100 years. So you're absolutely right, Maxie. That was a very good distinction to make. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jenny. And you don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting, but it's good to see you. And always thanks for your help.
I'm always glad to be here. Thank you. So are you going to talk about the new state librarian? I'm kind of curious if that's okay, if I continue to listen to that little part and then I can bail out.
I'm not going to say much at this point. And Suzanne Young said I could say this publicly. We have 20 applications. And Suzanne had Tom and I looked at them on behalf of the board because Suzanne had contacted me. We've had 20 applications from across the country. And I think most of them were high quality. We identified some applications that we thought rose to the top level. Matter of fact, Suzanne and I talked. I used what do they call that? Traffic light system, red for no, green for yes, and on the fence, yellow. So we've done, that's been done. It is the prerogative of it is the statutory authority of the Secretary of Administration to make the appointment, having consulted with the board. So there will be, I imagine, some more consultation. We did meet with her, I think 3 years ago or 2 years ago over Jason's appointment. I believe they are trying to schedule some appointments. I don't know exactly who at this point or when. I can let you know when appointments are taking place and how we might proceed, but I'm not going to go into all the details because this is the secretary's process and not mine. So hopefully we'll have an action on a new state librarian relatively soon. Another complicating factor is Suzanne is retiring as Secretary of Administration in November, which is not that far away. It may be at the end of the month. So I'm sure she wants to get this thing tied up before she goes. And the governor has named an interim secretary who's now her deputy. So that's what I can tell you at this point. And she was very impressed with the number of applicants. So a variety of experiences too. So it was enjoyable to see that. It's tough going through 20 resumes, but we did it. So there you go. I don't want to say anything else at this point because it is Suzanne's process. So Jenny, that gives you a little bit of idea where we are, and hopefully we'll know something within the next couple of months. We may have a selection. So There you go. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So let's move on. Tom, the floor is yours. I want to thank too, timeliness is very important. Josh, you got those minutes up after that last meeting within the required time. April, other than the fact you stumbled over my missing your email, you didn't stumble, I did. You got this stuff out fairly early. And Tom, I appreciate the fact that you provided your report in a timely fashion so people could have a chance to look at it, and you don't necessarily have to read it, but we can go through it point by point. But if you could summarize it and give your
Sure.
oral impressions of where the department is now and where things are, I'd appreciate it.
Right. Yeah. The board has had this, certainly the substance of this report for a week now, so I don't feel like there's a need to kind of read the report, but I can go through and just summarize some points here. First of all, in reference to Suzanne Young retiring, what an extraordinary public servant. It's been a real honor to serve under her, and even as state librarian for such a short amount of time. Still great. She's had a remarkable career. If you haven't read it yet, please read the governor's press release about her. Beyond that, I think that with Kristen Klauser, she's the deputy secretary, that both the Department of Libraries and the Board of Libraries are in good hands with her. I think the secretary has certainly impressed upon her, and she's gotten her own impression that, to use the secretary's words, that the Department of Libraries is a gem within the Agency of Administration. So we're very happy to be in that position and to be able to continue along with some momentum there. Just some quick summaries. Yes, there's not only changes at AOA, but change at the Department of Libraries. The special meeting, which the minutes you approved earlier, was where Jason announced that he was leaving for to be head of the National Library Service. My understanding is that he is doing well and settling in down there in DC. Sherry Yeager, who worked with the board for many years, the last 5 years, doing minutes, etc., moved to a different part of state government. She's with ACCD. Susan Whitney's last day was on Friday, so she was our contracts and grants administrator.
May I interrupt? The acronym ACCD, please.
Yes,
tell
sir.
us.
Agency of Commerce and Community Development. Yes, I'll remember. Acronyms are not known by everyone, even though I may say them 50 times a week. So, yep, good reminder. So, in short, our business unit has left. In the meantime, we've had several people step up, including Jeanette, Jennifer Johnson, Joshua Muse, April, and Jonathan Clark, so to pick up that stuff until we have new folks in the business unit. We're also losing Linda Bullard. She's announced that she'll be retiring on December 2nd. She handled our distribution of state documents, so all those green Vermont states annotated books, session laws, etc., pocket parts, all that stuff that's in statute is part of that. Oh yes, and I'm reminded that Joy is picking up Laura's work. Laura left the department several months ago, so that position has been open. So we're currently in the midst of several searches. So the library consultant for governance and management is the position I'm talking about. So Joy is our library consultant in that area, has been essentially been doing two jobs for about 6 months. So we're thankful to have folks that are willing to step in and take care of things as we go through the changes. But I think one of the things about the department right now is that we are in, actually, we have such a solid foundation these days that we can absorb these changes without having the kind of upheaval and tumult that maybe we saw in 2015. So I think we're feeling pretty good about where we are despite all these changes. And I think as evinced by the state librarian search, the Vermont brand is out there. It's very appealing to people, judging by the housing crunch. In fact, Jason, I think, found an easier time finding a place to live in DC than people were hiring coming in or finding here in central Vermont. So If that's a reflection of where we are, I think that's good for us in a way, but we might need to set up some sort of a dorm for state employees while they find a place to live. Meanwhile, the working group. So this was created over the last session.
Can I interrupt for a second? Because you've set up
Sure.
such a logical progression in your report. While we're talking about staffing, I'm just wondering what the process is. How's that going forward? You alluded to it. I'm wondering if the board has any comments, concerns, recommendations. So I'd like to, before we go on to the working group, I'd like to deal with this. Maxie.
I think I mentioned this to you, Bruce. As the former director of the Fletcher Free Library, where we worked with the union very successfully, I was always keenly aware that one should not overload a position with double duty. And I understand, Tom, that you've done a fabulous job bringing people together and talking them on, having them do one job that really requires two people. But I'm just giving you a word of caution. It's a double-edged sword, because people, the budget process will at some point start again, and then somebody will say, oh, you did this job with just a job for two, with just one person. Okay, let's cut that. It may not happen. I hope it doesn't happen. And I think it's fantastic that you and Jeanette and everybody picked up this double load. But okay, that was my comment.
Okay, Jeanette, your hand is up.
Yeah, I want to let Tom respond first if he wants to.
Okay.
I have a response to Maxie.
Okay, Tom, your pleasure.
Maxie, that's a great point. I think that the trouble is that we have a bunch of people at the department that work hard and really want to do a great job. And so we're kind of in this spot of, we know that we're at a critical moment in the calendar. Budget season has already started. I've already been doing a lot of that along with Jeanette. Jeanette's been doing extraordinary work, picking up essentially almost everything that Sherry did on top of her own work and a few other things. So yeah, I hear you, but it's kind of like, well, we feel like that with our searches that we're doing now, that we should have people. I'm hoping that we'll have one person in before the end of the month. And then the other searches, I feel like we're already interviewing for them this week. So I feel like we are on a pretty good track to have folks in certainly by December, hopefully.
Okay.
So we're just trying to fill the gap here, but absolutely. This is not sustainable at our current staffing level with our work level. In fact, I would have made that argument. I will make that argument that when we're full staffed, we are not adequately staffed for the amount of work that we need to do. So I think that there's not only ground to make up with existing positions, but the possibility of adding positions in the future certainly has been something that, as I've seen the responsibilities grow, the work change at the department, this is a radically different place than it was 10 or 15 years ago in terms of the involvement that we have, the work that we do, the skills that are required to do the work that we do. So things have changed a lot. So I do believe that that is absolutely correct, that if people see that you're doing it with what you've got, there's a tendency to say, hey, we could save some money here. But I certainly, from my position, would do absolutely everything that I can to prevent that from happening.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Good, Jeanette?
Yeah, thank you for that, Tom. And I want to just mention that the help that April and Josh are providing for you all, for the board, is one part that I didn't have to take over from Sherry, and I'm grateful because that's a big chunk of the work that she did, and I'm grateful to them for doing that and many other things. I also want to say, Maxie, I appreciate what you said. I've been in that position before where, you know, if you have a lot of openings for a long time, people say, well, you're doing it. But I also want to mention that we are in maintenance mode and in recover mode where, as Tom said, this isn't sustainable, and we can make an argument for it not being sustainable because right now we're not able to take on new big projects, which we should be doing as a department. And I think that's fine during this interim period. But at the same time, what's exciting about this situation is that we're creating redundancies as well. So I'm learning a lot of the things that Sherry and the contracts person were doing that I had no insight into, and I didn't really understand the process of what they were doing and why it's done and how it connects to other state agencies. So we're really setting the foundation for moving us forward in a way where if we had personnel changes in the future, the way that we have all of a sudden, we will be able to kind of pick up the slack again in a much easier way. So that's been the exciting part about being able to kind of take up some of this work. And even though it's stressful, it's also been really good because I feel like we all have a bit more of the inside track on things.
Maxie?
Thank you, Jeanette. That's a really important point, and I hadn't thought about that. So job descriptions might be reworked a little bit if there is redundancy, as you said. And yeah, I appreciate that. Good comment.
Thanks.
Linda.
I was just going to say that Jeanette, I think that's a really great point, and it enables you even when you go back to your own little job, your own big job, as opposed to having two big jobs, you can offer support to that other person in it, and it also provides some great cooperative work, sharing ideas. I would also say that I think so much of this depends on the timing. If you replace these employees as soon as possible, then they're clearly this situation is an interim situation as opposed to something permanent. And I wonder if you might be able to keep track of, with no fear of retribution, but keep track of what's not getting done. Not only, Jeanette saying we can't take on new projects, but what of the usual work is not getting done by people simply because they have too much to do. That could be helpful in any future budget deliberations.
I have one observation, though. As I look at it, there are 4 positions. 2 are classified. 1 is a temp. Now that's not classified. And then the executive assistant is an exempt position, correct?
That's right.
Now, I don't know where you are in the process of that, but I started thinking about that. I think Marty ended up having 4 executive assistants in the time I was here. Renee, then there was Secretary of Administration, Brittany, then somebody named Tess, who I don't think lasted a month.
And then Sherry,
And then Sherry came in. And I'm wondering if you could hold off on the executive assistant until we have a state librarian, because that executive assistant works. I mean, does the executive assistant really work hand in glove with the state librarian? How is that position conceived?
Right. We've had some discussions about this, and I felt that based on the fact that there's some critical work there that has to be done, I'm asking a lot of Jeanette right now, because she is picking up 3/4 of the work of that executive assistant, and it just didn't feel like it's something that we could wait on. We're a small shop. We already have to understand what other people are doing. I didn't feel like that was an option for us at the moment. We had an opportunity to go and make this a classified position, which I think is more appropriate for the job, and then go through that process and then advertise the job, which would have been that would probably take 2 to 3 months. So then you're looking at putting a search out, which is, at the state level takes with interviews 2 months, and then actually having that person leave whatever job they're in and come to this job is another month. So we were looking at a 5 to 6 month delay for that position, and I felt it was just too important to leave there. Hopefully, this executive assistant will be a good fit with the new state librarian, but it's kind of like we don't really have insight into the state librarian application process and all of that. I understand why it's inappropriate to ask someone to hire their own boss, for example, or be part of that process. So that's certainly understandable, but within where we were, it just seemed like we needed this person as soon as we can get them.
Okay, Jeanette?
Yep, I concur. And we did discuss this because, again, anybody coming into this position will come in blind, not knowing who their boss will be, much like the rest of us. So they're taking a bit of a gamble. However, we've had some really great applicants for that position. So apparently, either they don't know and we will make them aware, or they're aware and they're not afraid of this situation. I think, just to support what Tom was saying, so half of that position is really operational. So it's office management. It's making sure our bills get paid, the lights stay on, and that contracts get pushed through now that we don't have a contracts and grants person. So that's the part that would probably lag behind at some point if we don't fill this position. The executive administrative part of that is minor, or depends really how much will take how much of that part will take that person's time. It depends on who the state librarian will be as well, but it's really the operations, the business office part of that job that really needed to be hired. So it's important that we kind of move on.
Okay.
Finally, to put a point on this, the fact that Jason and Sherry left at the same time was coincidental. Without Sherry leaving, we would have a state librarian coming in with the existing executive assistant.
Good point.
Okay.
So,
and then exempt positions too can be, as I understand it, if there's not compatibility, it's the prerogative of the state librarian to decide not to keep the exempt position. I was exempt for a while when I worked for Governor Snelling, so I know what it's like. When I worked on Hill, I was always exempt. My boss died or lost, I could be gone, so I understand that. Okay, any other questions on the staffing issue? If not, we'll move on to the working group. Well, let's move on to the working group. Thank you, both of you, Jeanette and Tom.
Yeah, so the working group, Senator Hardy led the way with that bill. She wrote the bill, creating the working group on the status of libraries in Vermont. I won't recap everything that's in the report, but we did meet in September, September 17th, essentially an organizational meeting to say, hey, yes, we know we missed the 45-day deadline, but we are getting as close as we can. The group should have met within 45 days of the bill signing, which that would have happened sometime in July, I believe. Regardless, we did meet. We set up a bi-monthly meeting schedule. That means every other month, so that we can fulfill the stipulations of the bill, which asks for, I believe, for 12 meetings. So there's 11 meetings remaining. We set up the format of the meetings, which will be by topic, and we will put out a call for testimony between each meeting on those given topics, accepting written testimony from people in the state relating to libraries on the given topic. Right now, we're asking for a testimony about programming at libraries. So I think we need to get a little more notice about that. So if you folks want to, please take a look at our working group page on the Department of Libraries website. There's a link in the report, so that's available for you. We also have a link to the testimony page, which explains sort of the method and types of testimony there. You can also see who's in the group. It's an 11-member group. I believe that 9 of the members have been assigned. Meg Allison, who's president of the Vermont School Libraries Association, needs to assign 2 people or be one of those people herself and assign another person. So that's the last couple appointments that we're waiting for, and I expect that she will have those here within the next week or so. As I believe we've discussed previously, Jason certainly mentioned this, I believe, to the board, that this might happen. This is a golden opportunity. This is a once in a career opportunity. I think the last time that such a study was undertaken with libraries or anything close to this was in 1970. It resulted in some statute changes for the Vermont State Library. This is an extraordinary opportunity to be heard in a way that libraries typically are not, or it's more piecemeal. It's a great way for us to take a snapshot and say, here's where we are, here's some issues that need to be addressed, here's some possible avenues for legislation to address those issues, and then give this report to the legislature in 2023, so a couple of years from now. I can't tell you, I'm a little tired because I'm doing 2 jobs, but I'm very excited about this. So I hope that enthusiasm is coming through. I think this is just a tremendous opportunity for us. So I'm happy to hear comments about that.
Okay, do we have some comments?
I'd say
Maxie,
one
I
thing.
see.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, hey, Tom and then Maxie. Yep.
Tom,
Okay.
yeah.
I was just going to say, I understand that they're trying to get some members outside of Chittenden County, because living up in Barton there for 10 years, you know, people move to Chittenden County because it's so close to Vermont. So I think making an effort and reminding people to get members outside of Chittenden County and even in Washington County as well is really a good objective.
Yeah, the appointments I made last week were Jeanette Bear from Rochester, Susan O'Connell from Craftsbury, and Wendy Sharkey from Bennington. So just trying to loop in some of those other areas. Yes, I agree. The initial appointments were a little Chittenden heavy, a little I-89 corridor heavy. So I was hoping we could get a little more representation from Vermont.
Okay, Maxie.
So then the rest of the state will appreciate that. Thank you, Tom.
Maxie.
Just quickly, I think Bruce mentioned it. This all started when Rebecca and I carpooled to this little town way on the border of the Connecticut River. And that set the germ for this particular wonderful evaluation, state of the art that's happening now.
Yeah, I want to also, I think this is great. When I came on the board a long time ago, it seems, you know, we'd get some report every year, but it was never really useful. It was full of a lot of numbers and facts, but wasn't a lot of information and meaning in it. And so this is what I hope we can get out of this. And I also want to thank Tom for being sensitive to the issue about the dominance of a group that's part of what we call it the Burlington Montpelier bubble. Tom was not in charge. Tom only had 3 appointments to make, representing 3 libraries in the state. Some of them were made by the head of VLA, the head of the VLA subcommittee on university libraries or academic libraries, things like that, the trustees, stuff like that. For the record, I did write the head of the VLA a personal note. I was not happy to see that both representatives from academic libraries are both from UVM. Now, I understand they had trouble finding people, but, you know, it just.
There are other colleges, other places in the state that could have had representation. Absolutely,
So,
but
go ahead,
they're
Adrian.
all were working in a bubble.
Yeah.
You know,
so,
the different appointments.
So again, Tom, I want to thank you for naming those other three. And I know the school librarians have two to appoint, and you might counsel them on the need for some geographic and diversity, if possible. And we can, unless there's anything else, we can go on from there with your report.
I think one thing I would just finally add about this working group is that we all have a part in this. We're all part of it. We all can have a voice in this. And so just because the working group is a little Chittenden heavy does not mean that the final report has to be full of the sort of Burlington, Chittenden County perspective. Everyone has the opportunity to submit testimony. Everybody has the opportunity to come to these meetings, to be part of this process. And so I just want to underscore that, highlight that, and say that this should be a report about Vermont. So we're going to do our best to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
Adrian?
I was wondering if there could be more communications with the different library systems. It seems to me that at least on the public library end, there was like 1 or 2 emails, and it's easy to miss them. Sometimes emails go to spam. To have more promotion and excitement about this group, but I know that's your goal to do. And if people don't even know what the appointees are, I know from your report, but I don't think there was an email unless it came in today that have announced, oh yeah, we have someone from Central Vermont, we have somebody from Southern Vermont, we have someone from the Northeast Kingdom. And, you know, also we want you to participate. There is a paragraph in Jeanette's email, but that may be what Linda was saying about, like, maybe some of the things are getting missed because so much energy and attention is spent elsewhere, thinking about how libraries might know about this. And not everyone follows, you know, the state, you know, as closely as the board might.
Precisely. I think your point about what's being missed, we're sort of hitting a really interesting point with the department. We have these Arpa funds that we're trying to distribute. We have this working group. Both of these are once in a career opportunities, and they're big. And if they were happening, they would be everything that we're talking about. If they were just happening solo. But we're kind of hitting all these things at once at the moment that we've lost our business unit and our state librarian. So it's a bit of a challenge, and I don't want to, I'm not pushing back against what you're saying. I think you're absolutely right, and we will do our best to promote this further. We're open to ideas about that, of course. If there's any means of promoting this that perhaps we haven't considered, we're certainly open to suggestion. Maxie, did you have your hand up?
No, I made a mistake. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm looking at my old notes.
Okay.
So if there are no more comments, and James.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to mention, Tom, I see the bags under your eyes. And I would imagine that there are quite a few of the other staff members who are doing, you're working 2 jobs instead of 1. And I do remember you saying you're not even applying this time because there was some acrimony. I'm ignorant of it because I wasn't on the board, but that there was some acrimony that you wanted to avoid. You might even want to be someone who to a large extent trains the new person who will be your boss. And there's in my mind a little bit of how should I put it? I have a little bit of discomfort about it. I'll put it that way. So I just wanted to say that and I'm sure others also appreciate this double work that you and others on the staff are doing. Because so often when people wind up in a situation like that, they're taken advantage of and not appreciated.
That's very kind of you, James. Thank you. That's really nice to hear. And I think you're seeing the bags because I got a new higher definition camera.
I'll accept that explanation.
My allergies are a little bad right now too. So,
Okay.
but yes, I am. I have found out what exempt actually means lately. It means that you work whenever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but
it's been good. It's been good. And just to clarify, because the state librarian's in an appointed position, And I love Vermont and I want to stay here. I don't want to have to look for a different job maybe in a couple of years if there's an administration change. It's kind of a really basic math thing for me. So, but I appreciate your endorsement there and certainly your praise. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, let's move on. Tom?
Hang on. Yep, I know we're hitting my time here. So one thing I did not mention in my report, which I neglected, is that we're about to distribute close to $1 million in ARPA grants to public libraries. So that'll be in the next report for the next board meeting about how that's all happened. We expect to be able to get those out in the next, I really hope that we can get those out certainly by the end of October, which was what we promised to libraries. There's really no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that. So that money's going to make a lot of difference on the ground. We're very excited about that. And like I said, I'll have a full report in the next one. If I'm still writing that report, and if not, I'll ask the new state librarian to put that in for you. Josh has been doing this really great weekly survey of COVID issues. He started asking about masking requirements back in July. And as you might have guessed, masking requirements have gone from about 26% of libraries to 61 requiring masks for anyone coming in the building. And actually the sort of secondary categories of masks for unvaccinated push that up to about close to about 80% of libraries have some masking requirement if you come in the library. So thank you, Delta. I think we're all kind of aware and fed up with that. I see that VPLF is on the agenda coming up, so I won't talk about that. Just a very brief sentence about that in my report that we need to have a meeting. Finally, there was a program about building ventilation. Please click through if you can. That's also linked on, I think we can get to that through the Department of Library site. Dr. Dubeef, I don't know, Jeanette, you can help me out there, but UVM, okay, Ives Dubeef, UVM mechanical engineer, did a presentation for libraries about ventilation in buildings. And if you watch between the 7 and the 11-minute mark, you will never want to be inside with another human being again. That's the short version. The long version is that there's a lot of good solutions that are relatively low cost for purifying air in indoor spaces. So I strongly encourage anyone listening or anyone on the board to go ahead and take a look at that. I think you'll find it great. I threw in some tidbits about the annual public library report in the report. Josh does a great job with that, and that information is out. Jonathan's been doing a great job working with other youth services librarians in the region, and we're excited about the work he's doing with the annual virtual teen summit. So that's also listed in there. So in sum, I think we're doing okay considering a lot of losses lately, but again, the staff is stepping up and really doing extraordinary work, if I do say so.
Any questions on Tom's report? I appreciate the dialogue we had. And again, I think that's facilitated by the fact you got the report out well enough in advance and you didn't read it for us here, so we could probe and provide our feedback and advice. That's what we do. So I think we could move on to the Vermont Public Library Foundation. And let me just preface it. You give everybody a bit of a background on this first. We've talked about it a little bit in the past. It, as I understand it, it's not really, go ahead, give us a little bit background first.
The Vermont Public Library Foundation, is my understanding, was created by Sybil McShane.
Sybil McShane was the predecessor to Marty Reed.
That's right. Yeah. So she was state librarian after Patty Clank, before Marty Reed. So in the mid 2000s, early to mid 2000s, I would say. So somewhere in that period around 2003, 4, 5, somewhere, she created the Vermont Public Library Foundation as a means to accept gifts to the department and a way to handle special funds that were not part of the state budgeting process. And I think that some of you may have heard the name Dr. Rawson. He was a benefactor to the department for a number of years and continues to be. We continue to get funds from him that go into the VPLF. Actually, I should say from his estate. The VPLF, I believe, was the mechanism for distributing the Gates funds that went out around 2010, 11 for Fiber Connect. And Josh, you might correct me here, but I believe that that was one of the ways that the funds went out for that. So it was a good tool for us to be able to receive those kind of large funds and then be able to put them to use for doing, clearly a lot of good in the state. As that fund has aged, Marty Reed used it to fund a number of things, including GMLC. Oh, and Josh tells me that, yes, it was used as an emergency fund for libraries after Irene. So that was a really good way to have some quick money to be able to spend to address immediate concerns. Under Scott Murphy, when Scott took the fund over, he saw what I saw and what Jason saw, which was that it's an odd thing. It is created in statute, or actually the rules for it are that the state librarian is sort of the sole manager of this with the board, but that it's outside of the Department of Libraries. So in the language, no one on the department is allowed to do anything with it or work on it because it's not part of their work. So it has some quirks, and Scott felt that there were some liabilities with it, and that maybe, I'm trying to figure out how to say this, that maybe certain state librarians had used it as a means to skirt state regulations about spending money. Not illegal, and I'm not implying that, and probably not even improper, but that it could be used in a way that would create an unnecessary liability for the department and for the state librarian. Maybe I've said too much, but I'm just, I'm a pretty direct and honest person, so that's how I see it. So Scott transferred that idea to Jason. Jason was looking at different ways of dealing with this and really had not gotten to that before he left. So we're at a point now where the signature power is still being transferred from Sherry and Jason to Jeanette and me. So it's kind of in limbo right now. So that's the history, and I'll save what I think should be done with it for the rest of the meeting.
Well, I know I've heard talk about this off and on. Marty would mention it, and am I correct though when you said the board of VPLF? It is not the board of the State Board of Libraries, is it not? It could be
right
anyone. Mm-hmm. But I think Maxie, Deb, and I said we'd serve on the board, and Jason never brought us together, and I think we do need to get a handle on this thing. I've also heard that there was lots of money in this fund at one time. I don't know. I've somebody once mentioned $10 million. I don't know if it's the case. What is the balance today? It was around $300,000 or something. That's right. Do we have a trail of where that money went? That's what I'd like to know. And I don't know the process for divvying it out. How was that handled? Was it something that the state librarian could do at will? I just don't know. And I do think, while it's a good idea, I still have the feeling that it could be something that could be problematic. And I do believe we have to, the board of VPLF at some point soon needs to come together. And these are some of the questions I would ask, because I want to see a record of this stuff. I want to know how it was handled. I want to know how it was advertised, if at all. Because a lot of money distributed in a sort of ad hoc way is not necessarily very good quality control, and certainly not potentially not transparent. So those are serious issues. I don't think we don't have that amount of money now, but we could get more money going forward in the future. So we have to take a look at it. So that's why I'm glad that the entire board is hearing this discussion, but the entire board, the Board of Libraries, has no jurisdiction over it at all, do we? Yeah. Okay.
No.
So
the 10 million you're referring to, I believe, was the Gates money. Yeah, I think I agree completely with your criticisms. One of my goals since coming to the department has been to do whatever I can to try to get the department in line with state regulations and processes. And having a slush fund for a commissioner is really weird. It's not something that's common in state government. And I think that under scrutiny, that this could be a liability to the department. And I would much rather, if somebody's going to give us a gift or a grant, I'd much rather have that come through the state processes so that it's actually vetted.
Mm-hmm.
Because think about it this way. If you're spending tax dollars on one thing, but you know in the back of your mind that you have this VPLF money that you could spend on a different thing, doesn't that kind of affect the meaning and value of the tax dollars that you're receiving, right? Doesn't it kind of undercut that what you're being allocated in the budget? Because you may make different decisions about how to spend that money if you didn't have this sort of backup fund, right? And I also agree that, to my knowledge, there's been little transparency or scrutiny over this. Yes, there are records. There are a lot of records. I would say that if you enjoyed going through the minutes, you might enjoy going through all those folders of VPLF records. But that said, I think, yes, a meeting is definitely in order, and we should think about making some decisions about this. So I'm still waiting for the credit union to let us know that we do have signatory power and control over these accounts. Once we have that, I would like to schedule a meeting.
Yeah, because, for instance, if I'm joining that board, to put it bluntly, I don't want my butt getting burned over prior actions and slapdash handling of somebody's money and somebody's contributions. And I don't know what the intent of any of the donors was or any of that stuff. So it's gone by the boards for a while, and now's the time to really pay attention to it. And the three of us board members really need to know a heck of a lot more. I'm sure we could get buried in paper. And then if we have a transition to a new state librarian, they're going to ask what the heck this thing is. So maybe it's because I'm going off the board. I'll have time to deal with something else. Maxie.
Well, I just wanted to say we had a similar situation at the Fletcher Free Library when I started there, and was one of our board members who actually administered this particular fund, and we folded it back into the city because it just was, we didn't know what was happening to the money or how to use it. So thank you, Tom.
Okay. Any other comments or from Tom or the board staff? Okay. Well, I just don't do anything big with the thing until the board comes together. I think that's appropriate. So is that it, Tom?
Yeah. I believe so. Yeah, your note about that was timely. I shouldn't do anything with any accounts or move any money until we call the board.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we're coming down to the witching hour, but we wanted to talk about the quote, the future of the board, or at least the future membership of the board going forward. I know also one thing, Maxie wanted to try to update our roster. I think we could send it around. There are some holes in it. We don't have some phone numbers or addresses, and that would be helpful. And I can take care of that after this meeting. With your permission, Maxie, I'll send stuff around because somewhere I've got a roster, but there are some holes in it. So coming up in February of 2022, do I have that right? Yeah. Deb's and I are term limited. We've served the time we can serve on the board. Just to restate, you can get 2 4-year terms. I don't think they have to be consecutive, but if you're appointed to fill an unexpired term, that doesn't count. So Deb and I were both originally appointed, I think, to fill a term that still had 3 years on it. So by the time the two of us get done, we will have been on the board for 11 years. I don't know if that's some sort of a record or not. And I've seen a lot of change in the board in that time. And, you know, while we are limited in terms to advice, I think we've had good relationships, particularly with the last 2 state librarians. So we have to think ahead of time about who would replace us. I think I have an idea. Maybe if I'm trying to think of some people I might recommend apply. The application, the appointments made by the governor. And the governor has an office on boards and commissions where they advertise. I don't know if that ever gets any attention. So therefore, I think sometimes word of mouth is very helpful and useful. So I'm really thinking about someone who will succeed me in this position. Deb and I can both continue to serve until an appointment is made. As much as I've enjoyed this, I would hopefully somebody would replace me on time. And we also, at our next meeting, it's the organizational meeting of the board. So we will have to name a chair and a vice chair. And with so little time in our terms, I don't think it's appropriate that Deb and I stand at that point, and you can think about it before that meeting. We don't have to do anything at this point. And the next meeting, who knows? We may have a state librarian. I just don't know. And as I said to you in the beginning, as I hear more from Suzanne, I'll communicate what I can communicate, and we'll go from there. So I just wanted to. I don't know if folks have ideas. It's been great that we've had 2 people from Weston, because that's, you know, we don't have any, you know, Linda and Deb are the only representatives we have from Southern Vermont. And now that we can do these, we can participate online, we can go back into, open session at some point. But I'm thinking people from Brattleboro, Bennington, that area, people, well, we've got Adrian from up in the Kingdom, but we have, Maxie, Tom, and I are Chittenden-centric people, and with a lot of experience. So I just want to put on your thinking caps about folks that we could have coming on the board next year. So any thoughts or comments, you're welcome to add them at this point. Linda.
Yeah, I'm just curious, are we looking for, so Deb and I are library trustees. We're not librarians. Adrian is a librarian, Maxie was a librarian. So I wonder, are we looking for trustees, or are we looking for librarians? It seems to me that there are lots of librarians in the southern half of the state that we could potentially recruit. for the board, but I'm just curious as to what we're looking for. And Adrian, maybe you probably know all the librarians in the state, at least through email or the listserv or whatever. And maybe there's someone who's in the southern part of the state. But I certainly agree, Bruce, that we ought to expand geographically to the extent that we can.
Tom, you've got a comment, do you?
Oh, you mean this Tom? I just
No,
unmuted myself. Oh, the
Tom
other Tom.
McMurdo. Tom
Okay,
McMurdo.
Tom,
I
yeah.
think.
Sorry, I was muted. In Maxie's defense, once a librarian, always a librarian.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've been thinking about our networks. I think it's nice to have a mix of non-librarians on the
Yes.
board, especially for geo-naming. I think that's been good. I have been in contact with a former consultant at the Department of Libraries who lives in the southern Vermont, Bellows Falls area, who may be interested. So
Okay.
we're definitely getting the word out.
I remember when Marty was still the state librarian, an active librarian actually applied. And Marty thought it was, I don't know how she put it. Yeah, I really don't have, like Edmund Monk's The Scream. I think there's a disadvantage of having the State Board of Libraries full of librarians, frankly, because there are trustees and there are also users. There are people who have perspectives on libraries that may not be connected directly with a library, and that provides some value. So there's my thought. Maxie.
How about legislators? Could they, I mean, we could try to recruit among our legislators.
Yeah.
Active politicians, is there such a thing? Yes. How
about the governor? I think we should ask him to sit on the board.
Benefactors. I'm an old fundraiser, so I don't know. I agree. We don't necessarily have to have just librarians and trustees. We could branch out. Diversity is certainly important.
In the old days, God, I actually go back to the old days, but and that's, I'm counting when I came to Vermont for college in '65, we were under a system where the departments had boards that would hire their own commissioners. And Dean Davis, Phil Hoff started changing that. And Dean Davis, when he was elected governor in '68, did a lot to revamp state government, to streamline it, to establish the mega agencies. And for instance, Forest and Parks, Perry Merrill, who is legendary in Forest and Parks, he was commissioner of Forest and Parks for 19 different governors, never appointed by one of them. So that started to change. The Board of Libraries, I think, did at one point have a say in the state librarian, but I can't document that. So it's no longer. And again, we have this dual-headed responsibility of advice, which I think we could do. Marty once said, Sybil McShane, she asked Sybil McShane, well, what do you do with this Board of Libraries? And Sybil's response was keep them entertained. And, after a while, that gets pretty boring if you're at all interested in libraries and talented. And I don't think that's been the occasion with this board in my tenure. We've had a number of people run through. And then we have the geographic naming function. I was with Julie Moore recently, the Secretary of Natural Resources, at a public outreach session on global warming. So I turned to her and I said, so I hear you guys want to take over geographic naming. And she says, not on your life. So there you go. I think we'll still have this body doing it. So we can think about, Glenda, I see your hands up.
Right. I just had another suggestion. It seems to me that as libraries become more community centers. It seems to me that that's a big focus of libraries these days, to be community, to hold a community together, to unify a community. So I wonder if a community activist from some part of the state, or a select board member for that matter, from some town might be a useful member on the board, especially as we're looking at the library commission not the library commission, but the library working group. They could have some input in that area as well.
Okay, Tom Frank.
Yeah, I would agree with that totally. Especially, I was just thinking a select board member, especially from the southern part, because how you distribute funds to them to make sure, and you have the public libraries, you have the private libraries, you have the hybrid ones, to make sure, especially from the southern, maybe a select board member, school librarian, or somebody from the school. How do we interact with them? Now that we have Karen Graveland with special populations, we have to remember that we do serve special populations, and get a board member from one of them.
Yeah, and I was thinking too, I don't know if the listserv is a place to advertise that the Board of Libraries is going to be having 2 vacancies. That would get it around. I don't think it has done that in the past. And like I said, I don't know how people really find out, other than the governor posts it on the boards and commissions website, but I don't know if they do any advertising.
And I apologize. It's not special populations anymore. What is it, Tom? It's the consultant for inclusion and diversity.
That's right. Isn't that right, Jeanette? Help me out here.
Yeah.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah. What a nice change.
Yeah, it's not special populations, special ed. No, it's
inclusive services. That's it.
Inclusive services. That's what
Jeanette tells me
the name was changed. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice change.
I've seen that change over my lifetime, I'll tell you. Go ahead.
Just about putting it out on the list, our lists tend to be librarian heavy. So if we were to do that, I would want to make it clear that we're looking for folks that are not necessarily librarians.
What are the trustees? Do they have an association that advertises?
We have a list for them.
Okay. And James, did you say something?
I said a good lawyer would help.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say, if you can find one.
Well, think of Josh, please.
Yes, Josh. Josh was great. Josh, had he was a good lawyer, good man, and had been very involved in the. God, I always remember the name. Forget the name of the Montpelier Library. What is it?
Kellogg Hubbard.
There you go. There you go. So, anyways, I think we've talked about this. Unless anybody's got any more comments, any general comments? Yes, Linda.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Bruce. So if we have some suggestions of people, should we pass those along to you?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And we can go from there. Well, our next meeting is the second Tuesday of January. I don't know what date that is. At some point, I guess we might investigate whether we want to do in-person meetings or the hybrid meetings. Everything just, I seem to never know what's what anymore. Tom's talk about the engineering professor from UVM's, listening his, you never want to go into a room with another person. So we can think about that in the future. I'll follow up a day or so trying to get out the roster that I have, and folks, if you can fill in the negative spaces that might, or correct anything that's wrong in there. I think the website's current with all the expiration of terms. I think that's okay, and I think that might be reflected in the roster, and we'll go from there. Again, when I hear anything from Suzanne Young, and I want to second what Tom said. Suzanne has done a remarkable job as Secretary of Administration. I've seen several Secretaries of Administration, and I told her the best compliment they ever that could be paid to her was that she did it in such a low-key way, and she didn't draw attention to herself. And she never did that. But Suzanne also is no pushover. She can be firm and direct, so she we'll miss her. The state of Vermont will miss her, and I'll miss the rest of you guys until our next meeting. And at this point, and Jeanette, have a great trip to Germany, and I hope you have a wonderful visit with your mother, and everything goes without a hitch. So at that point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move to adjourn.
I second.
And
All right,
second,
James.
all in favor?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And
Thank you
that's
very much,
evident-
everyone.
And that's a non-debatable motion. I always
Yeah,
have
and
to add.
evidently it's unanimous. Yes, Maxie, we're done. You can make a comment, though.
Can I make a comment? It's Jason's 50th birthday.
Birthday today.
The 14th,
Thursday.
14th, I
Thursday?
think he told me. Yeah, I
Oh.
think it's the 14th. Today is Tuesday. Yeah, it would be the two. Yeah, oh my God, my youngest daughter's birthday's tomorrow. Holy cow. The one in Germany. I better get on it. So anyways, well, we'll see you all later. Thanks, Jeanette, Tom, April, Josh, all the help you've done in this regard. And thank everybody for making this such a lively meeting. And if I talk long enough, I can dismiss it right exactly at 12, but let's go a minute early. Thank you. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks all.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.